right. Welcome to week number 4 of our Serving Challenge series, where we're diving into what it looks like to serve, what it looks like to be people that are using this one life that we have to make an impact here in serving others. Some of you are walking through the serving devotional book as you're going through that every day. Some of you are in serving groups or small groups where you're looking at what is your serving project. Some of you are new, you just walked in today. I think today God has a message for every single one of us, because when we look at Jesus, he exemplifies servanthood. He even said, "I did not come to be served, but to serve." And so we're looking at him and we're learning from him how we can live out a life of service. And we're going to look at probably one of the craziest small group stories in the Bible. There are some crazy stories in the Bible, but this was a small group serve project that just was off the hook. These guys took this serve project to a whole nother level. People looked at what they did that day and thought, this is really unacceptable. This is unorthodox. Some people said these guys might even be unhinged, what they did that day. And so we're going to look at this story, and we're going to look at the fact that Jesus wants us to step into serving in a crazy way, and to be crazy for the God who is crazy for us. Years ago, I read a book from Leonard Sweet, and it said this about Christianity. He said this here, that the number one problem in the church today is numbing normality. And this was the book called Jesus Makes Me Crazy. Like when I met Jesus, I began to do things different than normal. And when we follow him, we begin to serve in crazy ways. And it's almost as if he writes in the book that it's taken 2,000 years to take the transformational, out-of-the-box teaching and life of Jesus and make it normal. And in this series, we're walking through these 5 things. And in the church, we can be normal in these 5 things. The first one was attitude. I mean, you think of when people think of church, normal church, when you walk into church, you walk in as a consumer. What am I going to get out of it? What's in it for me? That's your attitude. And sometimes people stay in the church for years with that same attitude. But when you begin to follow Jesus and have a crazy church mentality, you begin to go, it's not about being a consumer, it's about being a contributor. What does God want me to do? How is he calling me to grow? Instead of what am I just going to get out of it, what am I going to give out of it? That we have a God who his attitude was service. That he was the king that didn't come to be bowed down to, but the king who took off his crown and got down and served people. And he says, adopting that attitude. And then he goes on last week, Pastor, and he talked about being available. Oftentimes, when it comes to servanthood, we were unsure, is this really going to benefit me if I get involved in serving? And there's some amazing benefits when you serve. But really, we're doing it so that it can benefit someone else, so that it can impact another life. And Jesus says we want to move into that. And greatness isn't status, but it's servanthood. And as we look today at this third one about action, normal church would say, come and listen and be good. That's the goal of church. When you look at the life of Jesus, he says, go out and be the good out in the world. Go out and transform this world and take the good news of Jesus out into the world. Normal church would say, those people over there are messed up. But a crazy serving church would go, I want to step into the mess of those people with the hope of Jesus. Because he stepped out of the perfectness of heaven and stepped into the mess of our lives and our world to transform us. And so we're going to look today at what it means to just have this crazy heart of servanthood in our actions, in the way we do it. This is the verse that we've been looking at in this series, is this. In Philippians 2, it says about Jesus, in humility, do what? Value others above yourselves. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less so that you can think about someone else and you can go and help somebody else. In humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus. And what was that mindset that resulted in action? What was that mindset of Christ living out this verse and living out his life? It was compassion. It was a compassion for people, that it was a willingness to say, I see people, I want to enter into the world and help them. I see people struggling and I want to enter into their situation and help them. Sometimes we think compassion, when we think of compassion, we think of it as, I just feel sorry for someone else. You know, I feel sorry. Maybe sometimes you watch a commercial on TV and they have that commercial with all the dogs for the Humane Society and you're like, oh, I feel so sad. I must have incredible compassion. And then you flip the channel. Compassion is more than just a feeling, as Boston said in 1977. It's more than a feeling. And this is what compassion is. It's this. True compassion is an inward feeling followed by an outward action. An inward feeling in your heart that, oh, I want to help this person. I see a need out there, and I can't just not do anything. I got to step in that moment and do something. I got to serve. The word in the Greek for this is actually splachnizoomai, which is this really long word. And it means in your gut and in your soul, you just can't stand by in a situation. Jesus looked at all of us and he said, I just can't stand by and watch. My heart breaks, so I've got to enter in and I've got to do something. And what I think Jesus wants to do in your heart and my life today is reveal where he wants you and I to take action. What is he calling you uniquely to do that isn't a calling for anyone else in this room, but it's your unique calling, you're in your unique small group or in your life situation that he wants you. And so we're going to look at this crazy story in Mark chapter 2, and there's 4 crazy things that these folks do that I think might just impact this compassion inside of us to move us to action. And so if you got your Bibles, you can open up to Mark chapter 2. It starts in verse 1. And this is this crazy small group story. If you've been in a small group story, maybe it hasn't gone like this because it's just crazy. This is what happens. Here's the beginning. When Jesus returned to Capernaum, several days later, news spread quickly that he was back home. Soon the house where he was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room even outside the door. That Jesus is teaching, and when Jesus is teaching, it's not like when I'm teaching and it's kind of boring. When Jesus is teaching, people are pulling up a chair and they're engaged and they're saying, this is really good teaching. This is exciting. I gotta hear about it. I mean, it was sold out, this event. People were coming from all over. People had their names on waiting lists but couldn't get in. They're standing there at the door just kind of peeking in and looking. I mean, it's amazing. You know, back and they sold it out so many times, they opened up a new level of seating. It was called standing room only seating, where you didn't get a seat. You just got to stand at the perimeter of the arena and watch, and hundreds of people would stand for the entire game as people are walking in front of them in the aisle and watch the game because they wanted to be there. Just imagine for a moment that at Summit, we only have standing room seating today. It's okay. And you're like, oh, I can stand for an hour. That's no problem at all. This is what was going on in this situation. That they were so crazy about Jesus that they said, we want to hear about it. I wonder, why are we not that crazy about Jesus? Why are we not? I was thinking about some of the relationships that I have and the relationships that I'm crazy about people. I mean, one person that I'm crazy about is my wife. I'm crazy about Kathy. You know, I've been crazy about her from the first day that I met her 36 years ago. I was crazy about her, and I was excited to meet her. But the truth of the matter is, in our life, I haven't always been crazy about Kathy. And those of you that are married, especially if you've been married a while, there's seasons in your life that, we had a season in our life that we didn't really hang out much together. We didn't go on dates together. We actually didn't even see each other that much. You know how that is in a marriage, it kind of goes on. Well, this went on for a number of years. Actually, it went on for 22 years of our life. I wasn't crazy about her. But all that changed the day that I met her. Because I was 22 years old when I met her. Before I met Kathy, I wasn't crazy about her. But as soon as I met her, I was nuts about this woman, and I rearranged my schedule to be with her. I canceled events with the boys to be with her. I was just crazy about her. And here's the question. If you and I aren't crazy about Jesus, my question is, have you met him? Do you know him? Have you hung out with him? Because when you hang out with Jesus, you begin to get crazy because you see the way he's compassionate toward us. You see the way he transforms your life and my life. You see this love that he has. And so if we're going to be this kind of crazy church, the first thing we got to be is crazy for Jesus. We just have to be people that are just crazy for Christ. And here's maybe why we aren't. Because the people in Jesus' day, when they spent time with him, they began to see how he changed their life. Because there's something so fascinating about Jesus, and this was in the Serving Challenge book. 12 times it uses the word compassion to talk about Jesus' attitude toward people. And every time it uses the word compassion, you know what is in the sentence? An and. He was compassionate, inward feeling, outward action, and he did. So here's some of the verses here that are in that are in the Bible. It says, that one is cut off a little bit. He was compassionate on the multitude, and he healed their sick. Jesus had compassion on the crowd of 4,000, and he miraculously fed them. Jesus had compassion on 2 blind men, and he touched their eyes, and he healed them. And then here's a couple more. Jesus moved with compassion for a leper and healed them. Jesus saw a woman grieving her dead son, and he had compassion on her, and he raised her son from the dead. And here's one in my Bible, maybe it's not in yours. This is Summit 222. Anyone know today's date is Summit? It's February 22nd. Jesus was moved with compassion toward you. And what happened? Answer that question. Jesus was moved with compassion toward me, and he gave me a second chance. Jesus was compassionate toward me, and he restored my marriage. Jesus was compassionate with me, and he extended his grace to me when I didn't deserve it. Jesus was compassionate toward me, and he loved me when I didn't even love myself. Jesus was compassionate to me when I had messed up a whole bunch of relationships in my life, and Jesus restored some, or restored the brokenness in my heart. Where in your life, when you see that compassion of Jesus, are you connecting it? Because if you don't connect it with what he's done for you, you will struggle with compassion towards other people. But when you see God's amazing compassion toward us and toward you, and you see the way he worked in your life, you'll begin to look at people the way that Jesus looked at you. And he extended compassion toward you and I when we didn't deserve it. And he transformed us. So the first thing, if we're going to be that kind of church here at Summit, that crazy church, and not just a normal church, we got to be passionate. We got to be crazy for Jesus. The second thing that we got to do as you keep going in this story is look what happens. This is what happens next. These guys, there were some guys, here it is, while he was preaching God's word, this is in Mark 2, verse 3. While Jesus was preaching his word, 4 men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat. This is the serve challenge here. These 4 guys had a friend, and he couldn't walk, and he couldn't get to Jesus on his own. He couldn't walk to get to Jesus. He couldn't get there, and these 4 guys said, we're going to carry you to Jesus. We're going to get you there. He needed some friends to get to Jesus because he couldn't get there on his own. And imagine the scene for a moment. You know, Jesus is in town and it's a big deal. And there's all these people, hey, Jesus is in town. We got to go. We got to go. And they look at their friend and they want to go and they go, hey, we're going to take you. And he's like, no, don't take me. You guys are going to be late. Just go. Get to see Jesus. You can tell me about how amazing he is. And they're like, no, man, we can bring you. And they said, literally, they probably called him up and said, we're going to stop by and we're going to pick you up. Literally, we're going to pick you up and we're going to carry you to Jesus. And so they did. And they're carrying him to Jesus. And what happens is they're carrying this guy to Jesus. And it's taken some time. You know, it changes your schedule. Do you realize when you step into a serve challenge, it will be inconvenient at times? It would have been more convenient to just go on their own, but they took this man with them. Carrying someone to church will slow you down. Stopping to pick someone up on the way to Summit will slow you down in getting here. But these guys were moved with compassion, and they said, we got to bring Jesus. True compassion is an inward feeling followed by an outward action. Has that happened in your life, in a situation? I was part of a church plant for 15 years, and 10 years ago after church one Sunday, one of the members came up and said to me, she said, I've got this compassion to do something. God is working, stirring in my heart to do something service-wise. And I was like, what is it, Amber? What is it? And she said, I want to do something to help with food insecurity in our community. And I know, see, we go to mission trips and we go down to the urban areas, but there are people right in our, upper middle class area that they're struggling, with food and finances. And she said, I think I got this idea. Maybe could we do something to help them? And I said, I don't know, Amber. And then somebody suggested an idea, a crazy idea. They said, why don't we just, what's the most needy community? It was this mobile home park. And they said, what if we just collected groceries on Sunday and we went door to door and just knocked on doors and said, could you use a bag of groceries? And I looked at them like, that's just crazy. Maybe we can offer prayer or something. I go, yeah, okay, let's give it a shot. I don't think it's going to work, but just go for it. It's a crazy idea. Because she said, I just care about people. I'm just crazy about people and I want to do something. And here's a picture of the first, they got a small group together the first time they went out. And they had saved, people donated groceries at the church enough to fill about 12 bags of groceries. And they said, let's just take our small group. We're going to go out on this serve challenge and we're going to just serve. And you know what they found out? People needed groceries. People needed serving. People were struggling. And we said, can we pray for you? And we were there for an hour hearing their story and praying with them and being Jesus to them and just caring for these folks. And they were telling about losing their job and telling about, caring for their grandkids and all the struggles of their life. And it all happened because someone was crazy enough about people and had a crazy idea to go out there and begin to serve. And so we began to do this every single month, going out to serve people right in our backyard. This was just 2 miles from the church, and people began to start coming to church too. It was an amazing ministry. It's still going today. So let's see what happens in this story. These folks are crazy about Jesus. They're crazy about people. Check it out. Here's where it gets really crazy. It says they couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd. They're carrying this guy and they're like running with him. They're trying to keep up. They're carrying him, and people are running past them. People are cutting on the right because they're getting to Jesus before them, and it's slowing them down. And they finally get there, and one guy goes, I knew we should have left earlier. I knew we shouldn't have stopped for lunch. I knew you should have worked out a little bit more because you were holding us up. You weren't running as fast. And we got here too late. And he can't get in. And when you get a group of friends together, there's always that one crazy friend that goes, I got an idea. And this crazy friend looked at his friends and goes, I'm not giving up. We carried him here. We got to get him in to see Jesus. And he lays out this crazy idea to his buddies. And what's even crazier is they go along with it. Look at what happens. They couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, so they dug a hole in the roof above his head And they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. Sometimes we read these Bible stories as if they're Bible stories. These are real stories. This really happened. How many of you would be like, you know what? I just love to have some people trespassing on my roof and maybe busting a hole in my living room ceiling. Does that sound cool? We look at it and go, oh, it was back in Jesus' day. They wouldn't have mind. No, it was their house that they were busting open to lower. And so just imagine the scene for a moment. They're all just sitting there listening to Jesus, and it's so good. It's so good that nobody's falling asleep in church as they're listening. It's so good that nobody's thinking about their lunch plans. It's so good that people even taking notes, and all of a sudden stuff starts falling. The straw from the ceiling and the stuff is falling down. They're like, is it an earthquake? Is it an earthquake? What is going on? And they're freaking out. And then all of a sudden there's this part up there, and then these four little heads look down. And somebody goes, I know you boys. Somebody went, I know your mother. You're in trouble. It had to happen. Come on, these are real people. These guys were crazy enough to do whatever it takes to serve people. We got to be people that do whatever it takes. They ripped a hole in the roof of the house, and then they lifted their friend up there, and they lowered him down. And the truth is, that had to annoy every single person there. There had to be someone sitting there going, I got here early, and at my church, we walk in through the door, and that's not how you enter our church. That's just wrong. They're trespassing. They shouldn't be here. You should follow the rules, people. But they didn't. Do we want to transform the valley, the West Valley, for Jesus? If we want to do that, guess what? We got to be crazy for Jesus. We got to be crazy for people. We got to be crazy enough to do whatever it takes to serve the people in our community. And that sometimes means you got to do some things a little unorthodox. Sometimes it means you got to do anything short of sin to reach people and bring them in to Jesus. I'm willing to do some things that have never been done. There are things that have never been done. And maybe there's some ideas right here in our groups that, as you gather together in your groups and you're like, we got to have a project, and somebody will go, I got a crazy idea. Lean into that crazy idea, because maybe that is what God wants you to do. I mean, think about it for a moment. Why were they willing to do all of this for their friend? Because they knew Jesus could do something for their friend that they couldn't do for their friend. They tried to help him. They wish they could heal him. They wish they could help him walk. But they knew that only Jesus could heal him. Have you looked around at your friends and your family in this world, that Jesus can do for your friends what no one else can do? Jesus can do for your family what no one else can do. Jesus can do for your coworkers what no one else can do. Jesus can do for those people that you have a heart to serve that no one else can do. And that's why we're diving into this serving. We're not serving for serving's sake. We're serving because we have been served by Jesus, and he's called us to serve. That's part of what it means to follow Christ. That we want to be people that not just feel it, but have an and with our life. Because there's an and with someone's life. Those that are going to be baptized in a little bit, somebody looked at you and said, I care about you enough to invite you, to reach out to you, to share Jesus with you. And they said, I believe God can do something in your life that only Jesus can do. And that's what he does. And when we dive into that, so how does this story end? How does this crazy story end? We've got, the crazy boys up on the roof that are trespassing. We got the upset, uptight Christians down there, or, down in the church. We got this guy that's paralyzed, can't walk, and he's feeling really awkward. And we got a compassionate Jesus. Look at what happens in Mark 3 or Mark 5. It says, seeing their faith. Jesus is seeing their faith. Whose faith does he see? The man laying there? The uptight Christians? The crazy guys on the roof? Seeing their faith, seeing their compassion, seeing they're willing to do whatever it takes to get this guy to Jesus, seeing that compassion in action and doing it, he sees their belief that God can do the incredible. And he sees their faith, these four crazy friends. These friends that were crazy about Jesus and crazy about people, their buddy, and crazy to do whatever it takes. They're willing to tear the roof off and do unorthodox things. And seeing their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, my child, your sins are forgiven. And then he goes into this long debate with the uptight people in the room, and we won't get into that. You can read that on your own. And then ... Then Jesus turned to the paralyzed man, and he said, stand up, pick up your mat, and go home. And the man jumped up, and he grabbed his mat, and he walked out through the stunned onlookers. Do you think this guy just walked out of there? I bet he just railed it up and was like... He just strutted out of there. Didn't he? And that's what happened. I mean, and these people were like, what have we just witnessed here in this moment? Because some guys were crazy enough to take action and serve. And look what it says. Jesus, after he did for them what no one else could do, they were amazed. And they praised God, exclaiming, we've never seen anything like this before. Isn't that our prayer here at Summit, to be a place where people look back and go, I ain't never seen anything like that before. This is amazing what God is doing in this community. A church that's crazy enough about Jesus and crazy enough about people and crazy enough about doing whatever it takes. And then our last crazy is the crazy enough to expect the unexpected. For Jesus to show up and just show off and do some amazing things in this place and in this West Valley and in our community. There's enough of normal followers of Jesus in this world that are self-centered and self-focused. God's calling us to be that crazy group of Christians that are willing to serve no matter what. You want to know what happened to that crazy serving ministry where they started going out with groceries and knocking on doors? We knocked on so many doors. People started coming to the church through that ministry. People started coming. We did that for the next couple years. And then we had too many people to give groceries to, and there were too much. So one of the rooms in the church, we turned into a food bank, and we made it into a food bank. And then we opened up the church on Saturdays for a food bank, and people would come over and they'd come in and we'd pray with them and encourage them. And then COVID hit in the middle of that, and we happened to be the biggest food bank in our community, and you couldn't come inside, so they were lined up down the street to come to this outdoor food bank where we're handing out groceries to people. And we didn't know how we were going to feed all these people, but people just started showing up with groceries from the community. People that didn't even go to church showed up with groceries. People from our church, when everyone was hoarding food and we're like, we got to stock up, people from the church were saying, we're going to go buy 2 of everything, 1 for our house and 1 for the food bank. And they were just dropping food off constantly. And an ever-increasing number of people. And the ministry grew so big, they had to now they have a building on campus. A separate building, separate from the church and worship center, just for the food bank. And it all started because somebody had a crazy idea and said, I want to take action on this crazy idea. And some of you are thinking, well, I can't do that kind of crazy thing. That's too much. I'll never make a difference in the world. There's too much need out there. What can I do? Little me. If I take action. Here's your challenge of the week. And this is from our Serve Challenge. It's this. Do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. Do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. You can't reach everyone, but you start reaching that one person, and that one person is transformed, and that one person begins to, and God just begins to do it. Step into those moments. So what is that ministry for you? What is that people group that God is calling you to reach out to? That this week he's saying, yeah, you got the attitude, you're available. Now let's take action. Let's follow Jesus out serving our community. Where is that for you? It's unique for every single person here. But you know what I know is that we don't want to miss it. I'm thankful these 4 guys didn't say, let's do something else that day. Then take our friend. His life was changed. And you don't know, when you step into that moment and serve and you take action, God begins to do the unexpected. God begins to do the amazing. God begins to reach into that person's heart and says, if you serve me, maybe there's a God who actually cares about me and wants a relationship with me. You know, and I got ready to leave that church, and last Sunday there were so many people that came in through that food bank. One of the women that came in through that ministry, she handed me a note. She was sitting in church. This was the Sunday I was leaving. And this is the note. She said, you know, I can't read it. We need to darken that. She said, go find some other people that need Jesus and be for them what you were for me. Go find some other people. And now I'm in another state doing this. Go find some other people. There's nothing better than receiving a note from someone to just say, thanks for serving me. Because in it I found Jesus, and now I'm serving someone else. Let's step into that moment this week, Summit. Jesus Christ, we come before you as people that so often, when it comes to action, we just kind of stay on the sidelines. And honestly, maybe there's some folks here today that when it comes to compassion, they're even struggling with that feeling of caring for someone else. And they've been doing normal church for so long and normal Christianity for so long, and it's been focused on them. And Jesus, today we want to see your compassion for us, that you stepped into our story and you stepped into our life and you had compassion on us when we didn't deserve compassion. You extended grace and forgiveness and love when we didn't deserve that. You stepped into a mess of our story, and there's an and in our lives. And that and is the transformation that you did in our life. And so, Jesus, to have us be overcome by that mindset again, and let that feeling move to someone else that you want us to go serve. Who is that person that God is putting on your heart right now? What is that people group? What is that need right in our community that God is calling you to take action? What is that group that you say, you know what, I want to go back to my group this week and I'm going to share that because I think God is moving me to step into that moment. Whatever that is, listen to, that's the voice of Jesus speaking into your heart and into your life and calling you to step out and be crazy for him. In your name, amen.